Welcome back to Buried Talent, the show for young professionals that tears down false beliefs about faith and work so you can unbury your God given talent right where you are. I'm Patrick Lowndes, and with me, my co host, Ken Freire. And today we're talking about laying the groundwork for two Christian callings. This will be a meaty and good foundational topic for us. But Ken, first, quick check in. How you feeling? I know you had some time off. This thing they invented in the Midwest called a fall break. Like, what the heck is that?
I know it's fantastic, man. My kids and I went hiking in North Carolina for a little bit, so it was a ton of fun. And my sister-in-law had their first child, so we got to celebrate with her.
I like it. I like it. And while you're doing like a fall break, like there's no breaks over here on the West Coast. Like we're just still grinding through it, but that's probably because we had a longer summer. But yeah, we're doing well. We did a ballet competition. I did not do the competition. My daughters did the ballet competition
I
last
was
night.
gonna say, wow, that would have been great for you, man.
I just have a little side hustle. Like I'm a male ballet. No, I'm just kidding. All right, cool. But that's it. Let's jump right in. So this topic of just laying the groundwork for two Christian callings, give us the setup here for this, Ken.
Yeah, this is actually probably one of my favorite discussions to have because, like most Christians, especially if you're a young believer, you get really confused on what you should do with your life. And I remember being young and wondering, what am I supposed to do in my life, in my calling with God? I want to be obedient. I want to serve Him. And I want to try to figure out how to do that as best as possible. I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I was following God's will. Now, the problem is that most Christians, when they think about calling, they think that they're called to full time ministry, right? They're either a pastor or a ministry leader. But that's only half the truth. The reality is that there's multiple callings, or depending on how you want to frame it, multiple callings that we have. And I love how Os Guinness talks about it in his book Calling, where he talks about there's a general calling and a specific calling. And that's kind of what we're going to walk through today.
Yeah. I love it. And so if you're kind of listening to this and you've kind of maybe taken this false belief, so every episode we're trying to hit on like, what is this false belief? Today, it's that Christian calling is only for people in ministry, right? Like, let's just
Yeah.
smash that with a giant mallet. And like, we're going to go through a ton of passages today to kind of unpack that a little bit. It sounds a little bit convincing, but like, there are some stuff that we've done in our Christian subculture, like it's just straight up unbiblical. And this is one of them, like saying that calling is only for people in ministry, like full-time ministry. We invented the word ministry in the year 1300 after, like way after other words were used to describe our vocation and our work. And so let's try to get down to the bottom of it. How do we want to kick this off, Ken, and dive into the topic?
Yeah, I think what's going to be really good is let's look at scripture and talk about how it exposes what actually calling should look like and how it's multifaceted and show that there's a general calling and a specific calling. I think that's a good way to go.
Yep. Cool, cool.
All
So
right.
the three big ones, you want to give us the three big ones? I'll do the seven other ones example. Let's just jump on in.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about general calling, first and foremost, all of us as Christians are called to these. And I think where we get confused many times is we're like, we're thinking about all the specific things we're supposed to do. But if we actually don't do the general ones first, it's really hard to do the specific one.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the general callings. And like, there's three buckets that you could think about of these general callings and what you're called to and how it actually defeats this flaw or this lie of only called to full-time vocational ministry, whether it be pastoring or doing something else. So Genesis 1:28, it says, this is what we would call the creation mandate, right? Where all humanity is called to work, to create, to cultivate. That's the first one. The second one is the Great Commandment, right? This is found in Matthew 22, verses 37 through 39, where this is to love your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And then the third one is the Great Commission, where you find this in Matthew 28, 19 to 20, where it says, as you go and make disciples of all nations, not just the church, right? So when you take all three of these things, you got to ask yourself, well, if we're called to work, we're called to create, we're called to love God and love our neighbors, and we're called to make disciples wherever we go. And another one that you could think about it, right, is that having our being filled with the Spirit, being walking in the fruit of the Spirit, all these different things about looking like Christ. If you start doing all that stuff that God's called us to, it actually makes your specific calling a lot easier to figure out. But
Yeah.
first and foremost, we got to talk about the general calling within these three broad categories of like,
Yeah.
are you living your life within the creation
Yeah.
mandate, Great Commandment, and the Great Commission?
Yeah. And I guess this is a really convicting question. Like, if somebody asked your coworkers, hey, you work with Ken, right? Yeah, cool. What are a couple of things that stand out to you about Ken? What's Ken all about? Imagine somebody interviewed your coworkers and said, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
well Ken's just all about this political party and then hanging out on weekends and doing." What if the answers was not at all about the those big buckets of calling, right? So that's a sobering thought to just think about. Like, what would your coworkers say about you or people around you if you're still a student, you're still at school? Like, what would your classmates say? Like, you just get really excited about, you kind of get activated, on. But let's just look at a couple other examples of that. I mean, and there's so many. Like, we're doing a quick episode here just to say, and this probably can, honestly, this probably should have come before episode 3. So episode 3, 4, 5, and 6, we unpack how to get clarity in your calling. This episode is a bit of a course correction on just making sure we lay that foundation. I was talking with this about somebody. He's like, no, man, we really got to make sure we clarify the difference between these. And so I just want to give a shout out to the brother at Austin Ridge, who helped me kind of just step back and look at this. But here are some of these other examples. Christ calls us to himself. In Mark 3, he's talking about, again, you have a relationship with me. Romans 8:29, to be transformed into the image of Christ. This is a calling that we have as Christians. We already talked about the calling to love, the great commandment. But there's lots of elements and lots of layers to that. If you look across, how do you love the least of these? I mean, there's so many different callings within that. The calling to work faithfully is not just in the Genesis 1:28. We see that again in Colossians 3:23. Like, everything you do, your work, everything you do, you're called to work faithfully. Like, regardless of who you are, if you fog a mirror, then you're alive, then you need to be doing that. Same thing with making disciples. What's unhelpful about the word missionary is, like, technically, again, if you fog a mirror and you believe in Jesus, like, you are a sent one, regardless of where you are. Forget about titles or where you're going, but just we're all on mission. And then the last two, I think, just to call out, are we're called to community, to belong together, be part of a body, right? If we're not doing that naturally, if don't see ourselves as part of that, I think a lot of the young generations of just, especially our generation, the millennials, have said, like, hey, we're just going to, like, listen to the best sermon that we want to listen to and, like, be engaged however we want to listen or however we want to engage. But no, God calls us to community. Hebrews also talks about don't neglect getting together, right? And the final one is, like, calling to persevere. So there's just tons of general calling. We're going to put that in the bucket of general calling. But now we're going to turn the corner. And the next episode, we're going to go into it a lot deeper, but just maybe help us make the transition, Ken, into those are things that all Christians are called to. What do we see about the specific calling and why that's different, why that's worthy of our attention?
Yeah. So one thing that I want to say is that general calling is a lot about who you're called to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And specific calling tends to sometimes be like the where and the how. We're supposed to live that out. And this is where, like, even going back to that lie, a lot of people get confused, right? Because they're like, well, I'm supposed to go make disciples. I'm supposed to love people. Well, the best way to do that is in the local church or it's in a ministry somehow. And that's where you got to take a step back and say, no, actually, we're supposed to be called to make disciples at work. If we're in school, wherever we're at, our neighbors, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're called to. So I want us to look at these general callings as, like, these are permanent things that no matter what season in life these are things you're always going to be doing or supposed to be doing, right?
Good.
Now, when we talk about specifics, and we're going to go a lot deeper in the next episode, so go check out the next episode. But the specifics is that this is all about the unique way how God has wired you, how you express yourself within these general callings.
Yeah.
And depending on every season that you're in. And I'll give you a great example. When I was younger, I was heavily involved in ministry, vocational ministry, and I was working 50, 60 hours a week. I was a lay elder in my church as well. I was doing a ton of stuff for God. That scaled back dramatically when I started having kids. Because now all of a sudden I have, like, mouths to feed, and I have, like, at the time of this recording, I have 4 kids and a 5th on the way shortly. it's like, oh, I don't have as much time.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean my specific calling is not there. It's just different now in this season. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, how to work that out. So recognizing that your specific calling is going to be a little bit more of a progression, it's going to be a journey and it'll evolve over time. What's going to be really important is needing a framework on figuring out in the season that you're in, how does your specific calling get shaped and how do we look at it?
Yeah. I'll share one more example about that. So, like, again, just good example. I when I was in college, like I was going helping churches think about their plan for like affecting the world and reaching the world. And again, like at 21, 22, with very little experience. And I mentioned this in one of the, I think it's episode 2, telling my story. God totally redirected me and said, "Hey, you need to go and like your specific calling for you." And this again, it came through elders at my church, it came through a few other mentors. Are like, you need to put in some time and become the person that you want to call people to be. And so my specific calling was like, you need to go like work at this software company and sell software. Right. And then the challenge was this, Ken, is like, now that I'm here, how at this company pay scale, how can I be effective here to love my coworkers, to excel at my work and be excellent as like a pleasing, like love God with all my mind and be really smart with my job and be effective. And as I started to work that out, like that was my specific calling, was just be great at selling software. That shifted about 5 or 6 years in, when the Lord was like, no, now I want you, now it's going to change. Now I want you to go figure, pioneer something brand new from 0 to 1. And I've done that now several times, but that was a specific calling for one season and it shifted to another specific calling. So we're going to talk about the nature of specific calling and how that moves. And maybe more practically, if you're listening to this, what are the things that you do to develop it, to discover it, to be in relationship and conversation with God about that? So that's the tee up for the next episode. Any other final thoughts, Ken, before we close on this 2 different callings?
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I would say go check out for sure the next episode, right? Because we're going to talk about what we call the RISE framework. And it's going to be fantastic for you to even think about. But for today, as you're listening to this, you may be wondering, I don't know my specifics. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. What you do know is the generals. Like, go be like Christ, go love like Christ, go
Yeah.
serve like Christ, go fulfill his great commission. Is there someone that God's called you today to go talk to and impact? Is there someone at work that you could just start gospel conversation? That doesn't mean you're going to fork the road and have an evangelism conversation and be like, go through the Romans road or anything like that. But you're just asking about the spiritual journey, right? You could start those things today. And the more you do that, man, the more exciting life becomes. So start walking in those things and realize that we're going to be able to help guide you over the specifics of your calling on the next episode. And also, if you want to join the community.
Yep, we could do that too. So again, the false belief is calling is not only for people in ministry. There is every believer. We have general callings and we have specific callings. And we look forward to unpacking that a little bit further on the next episode for how we go about discovering that and developing that. So we love you guys. Thanks for listening. This is just a good reminder of what you already know, just encouragement in that direction. And let's go deep and chart some uncharted waters in the next episode. Talk soon. Thanks.